Welcome to another episode of Bare Body Talk. I'm Elizabeth, and we're talking today with Chelsea Roff. Hi, Chelsea.
Hi, Elizabeth.
Tell us a bit about yourself, my dear.
Well, as you said, my name is Chelsea. I am the founder and director of a nonprofit organization called Eat, Breathe, Thrive. And basically, our mission is to prevent and help individuals fully recover from disordered eating and negative body image. I write quite a bit. I just had a big piece come out in Yoga Journal, and I do a lot of stuff in treatment centers, but mostly my job is running a nonprofit.
Nice.
Full-time plus some.
Wonderful. Wonderful. So I imagine running this nonprofit, you see a lot of different women. I'm assuming women, could also be men. But you see a lot of people come in to your organization with different past histories, different stories that they're working through. What's maybe the one thing that jumps out at you and why you do your work?
Gosh, I mean, if the question is why I do my work, maybe the story to start with, I can tell you all kinds of stories about the men and women I work with.
Yeah.
I think it's a commonly held misconception that men don't struggle with body image issues. I actually think it's just as prevalent in men. As it is in women, with a really severe eating disorder.
I'm sorry, Chelsea. Hi, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Bare Body Talk. My name's Elizabeth, and today we're talking with Chelsea Roff. Hello, Chelsea.
Hi, Elizabeth.
How are you, my dear?
I'm really well. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, of course. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
I am the founder and director of an organization, a nonprofit organization called Eat, Breathe, Thrive. And our mission is to prevent and help individuals fully recover from disordered eating and negative body image through yoga and community-based programs.
Nice.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
I love Eat, Breathe, Thrive.
That's pretty much us summed up.
I vote for that.
3 words, super simple.
Nice.
Hopefully it'll be on the ballot someday.
Yeah. That'd be really wonderful. I just had this vision of like, wow, if everybody did yoga and community-based programs.
It would be pretty awesome.
It would be pretty awesome.
I feel like it would be a happier world.
Definitely, it would definitely be a more expanded world for sure.
Yeah.
So what brought you to that work? What's your big why for drawing you into creating Eat, Breathe, Thrive?
I created Eat, Breathe, Thrive a couple years ago. I've been teaching programs in eating disorder treatment centers for probably 6 or 7 years. Mm-hmm. And the history, the sort of motivation behind it is I struggled with a really severe eating disorder in my adolescence and teens, severe enough that I was under 60 pounds and had a stroke. It was really tough. I was 2 weeks before my 16th birthday. So I ended up in the hospital for a year and a half, actually. I was 18 months in the hospital. I was put into foster care, really tough time in my life. And I'd been struggling to recover for probably 7 years at that point. And when I got out, I had a therapist recommend I try yoga. And I was struggling to keep my head above water. Like I was certainly doing better, but eating disorders are the most deadly mental illness, and they're extremely difficult to recover from. The relapse rates for eating disorders are over 60%, and they just get lower the longer you've had it. Mm-hmm. So it's hard. And while treatment was really helpful in a lot of ways, it was also, you come out and they give you a piece of paper that tells you when to eat, and you still hate your body, and you still feel like, like you're a floating head, basically. That's the common experience I hear about amongst these people. But long story short, my therapist strongly recommended I try yoga. And I thought that was the most ludicrous idea I'd ever heard. She was like, I really think it's going to help you. It's going to help you love your body. It's going to calm your anxiety. You're having a hard time feeling hunger and fullness. It's going to help you develop all these things. And I was like, that's BS. Yoga is fluffy. It's esoteric. It's new agey. Like, I don't want anything to do with it. If I'm going to do anything, I'm going to go for a run or go for a bike ride. And she kept pushing, finally stopped pushing. And I remember I came in probably 3 sessions later and I was like, hey, I have an idea. And she's like, oh yeah, what's that? And she was like, I'm going to try yoga. I think that's I can't imagine where you got that. So anyway, I tried yoga and it was life-changing. And not just the practice of yoga. The practice of yoga was extremely helpful, but it helped me, redevelop a connection between brain and belly, to know when I was hungry and know when I was full and know the difference between emotional hunger and physical hunger. It gave me a sense of community to support, like it just gave me community support. It gave me a sense that I had a family, and that there were like-minded people who would support me when my legs weren't strong enough to carry me on some days. It also helped me develop, I think generally it just gave me a sense of home in my own body. And one day I woke up and it was years later and I'd gone through a yoga teacher training, not because I wanted to be a yoga teacher, but because I really wanted to hang out with all those people a lot. And so yoga teacher training gave me an excuse to. And I woke up one day and I was like, wow, I feel weird. Like, what's going on? Like, what is this feeling? And it occurred to me, I was like, oh, I think I'm happy. I think I'm really happy. Like, I think that's what this weird feeling is that I haven't had in like a long time. Yeah. And I wanted to go out and share it. And so I started teaching at a juvenile detention center. And then I got coerced into teaching at a treatment center because my thought was, I don't want to have anything to do with people with eating disorders. Like, that's a shadow of my former self that I don't want to see. It might trigger me. And I just loved it. And I found that I knew exactly what to say to them. Like they would ask a question like, well, how did you deal with this body image issue? And I was like, oh, I totally remember how I dealt with that. And I could say it. And it felt service gave me I think it gave me a sense of value and worth beyond what any other modality ever had. It also, when I knew I was sitting at a meal with someone who was recovering from an eating disorder and they were looking at me and what I was eating, you better believe I was not going to starve myself because I loved the person sitting next to me and I cared about them and I wanted to see them do well and I wanted to model what real recovery could look like. So all of those programs, it went from teaching a yoga class to giving a talk to teaching a 6-week program to developing a curriculum. And then we kickstarted the nonprofit, July of 2013. So we've only been around a year and a half and we've got programs we've got programs in 22 different states and we've got programs running in clinical treatments. We've got 3 different clinical programs, but that's the why.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's a really good why. Thank you for sharing.
Sure.
To come from a place that sounds to somebody who has not experienced an eating disorder like that, sounds very scary. And yet I can completely relate to that feeling of, oh, this must be what happy feels like. I think I'm there.
Yeah. I bet you could I think most people can relate to, I see disordered eating as existing on a spectrum. Yeah. And I bet there were so many experiences I had, and it may have looked slightly different from what you've gone through or what anybody else has, but I bet what, sadness feels like and what helplessness feels like and what, using unhealthy behaviors to push down scary feelings feels like. I bet there's probably been a time in your life where you've hated your body and wanted to change it through unhealthy behaviors, I think it's pretty universal.
Yeah. So what kind of, that brings me to the question of sort of like, you say you hated your body, and that's a very large statement to make that you felt when you were going through your eating disorder. And then there's really living it. And then there's where you are now. And I maybe talk more about how that feels to you, the difference between the two and the choice. Yeah, the choices that were available to you in each place, because they're different.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, to transition, you kind of have to know where it's starting. So people often think of eating disorders as, oh, that's just somebody who hates their body and wants to look like a magazine model. I think of eating disorders as having three sort of major triggers. One is genetics. So every woman in my family up till, great, great, great grandparents has had mental illness of some sort. And some of us acted that out in eating disorders. Others acted it out in substance abuse. I had a severely alcoholic mom, so I think I talked to a researcher actually for an article I recently wrote, and he ventured to say that he thinks that 80% of the risk factors for eating disorders are genetic. So there's that. The other thing was social factors. So I was living in a world where I'm struggling as a kid. Like I said, my mom was severely alcoholic. There's a lot of emotional and all kinds of trauma and in my life growing up, and I don't need to go into any of the details, but I was going through, I'd gotten really good at pushing down my emotions. I was having, there was major traumatic events happening, and it wasn't safe for me to express my emotions, so I ended up pushing them down. And then I hit puberty. And man, I don't know about you, but I was not able to push anything down in puberty. Like it was like emotions like crazy, right? So these are some of the emotional factors that lead to an eating disorder. But I think what happened for me at that moment, and this is where we're bringing it back to the body, is as at the same time as all of this like control and like I'd kept it so pushed down, and I was, surviving. I was able to keep my emotional life in this like numb state so that I could survive. It all comes bursting out. So I'm no longer numb, and I'm, struggling with these waves of emotion. And at the same time, my body is changing rapidly.
Yeah.
I'm getting curves where I used to never have curves. And that, I think somehow I made those two things the same. Like I thought that my body changing was causing all of my emotional pain. And so that was when I got to the point of like hating my body. It was like, well, if I could just control my body, if I could just fix my body, if I could just make it look like that woman on a magazine, which they all say will finally make you happy because they look so happy and airbrushed and photoshopped. If I could just, get the control back over my body, then I'll finally feel okay again. I'll finally feel happy. I'll finally feel loved and worthy.
Right.
So that's where it started. And for a while, and having, problems with food and body image was actually really functional because it occupied so much space in my mind. There was no space for pain or anguish or sadness or tears because all I could think about was calories and how fat my stomach was and what I weighed on the scale. Like it was really functional in that way. It was a survival mechanism. Unfortunately, I tell my clients this all the time, winning at an eating disorder looks like dying.
Yeah.
Like there is no thin enough. There's no throwing up enough. There's no enough until you get to death. Like that's exactly the path it's taking you down. So it's not a healthy coping mechanism. So as I started entering recovery, what happened was I had to develop other coping skills. I had to learn to sit in my pain and sit in the anguish and be an adult in it. As a kid, you don't have that capacity to know that you're going to be okay, that you can go through a wave of sadness or a wave of grief or a wave of longing and that it's going to pass.
Yeah.
And so I think, through a lot of really good therapy, through a lot of good community support, so having friends around me that could hold me and be with me in my grief, not having to be alone in it. And I think also having skills in my body, I use yoga and meditation practices as a way of creating optimal states of mind, not just yoga. So for instance, I went on a walk first thing in the morning today. I did that because I wanted to be in a positive mood. And I know that releasing endorphins and being in nature and seeing the sun puts me into a really good mood. And it also makes me more focused and concentrated to do my work. And that's what I did this morning. I developed coping skills like that and I started to appreciate my body for functionality rather than form. Yeah. I don't care what it looks like, but I do want it to be able to support the life I want to live. I want to be able to have a conversation with Elizabeth. I want to be able to go and cuddle with my cat and hug my friends and it not hurt because I'm so bony, but it's little things like that. So that's the difference is I went from using my body as a way of using controlling my body and using, body harmful behaviors as a way of controlling my emotions to using my body to create optimal emotions. And learning that I have that capacity, and that my body carries me through my life, and it's something to be appreciated because it allows me just incredible experiences.
Nice.
Yeah. I hope that was a long answer, but I hope it helps.
Brilliant answer. I mean, there's no wrong answers here. We're not being tested on.
Yeah, no, I said long.
Oh, long. Don't care about that either.
Awesome.
Yeah, no, that's brilliant. And I love, because there is such, regardless of whether you have experienced mental illness or an eating disorder or whatever upbringing you had, everybody has their different histories, regardless of what you grew up with or what you've experienced in your life. How we relate our emotions to our bodies. I mean, especially as women, we're women talking here. There's something about, and this organization, Women Enough, there's something about being enough as we are. It's really hard for us to come to, without the community, without the mindfulness, without the practice of it. Maybe some of us are better at it than others, maybe, but there's something that we can't quite emotionally wrap ourselves around. What's been your experience with that?
With coming to feeling enough?
Yeah.
Oh gosh. I mean, what comes to mind when you say, regardless of whether you've had an eating disorder, I mean, the stat is 80% of women feel dissatisfied with their body. Yeah. So again, I think of it as a spectrum. I don't know a single man or woman who hasn't struggled with something on that spectrum at some time or another. Yeah. And I do think that underlying a negative relationship with your body is a feeling of, two things. I would use the word unworthiness. Same thing as not enough, but unworthiness, but particularly the feeling that you're not worthy of being loved or that you're not lovable. And that's a hard one. That's literally at the core of all of our programs, is helping. The truth is that we live in a capitalistic society. Yeah. Diet companies, the media, fitness industry, they're all trying to sell you their products. And in order to do that, they have to convince you that you're not enough.
Right.
In order to do that, they have to create a sense of need in you. They have to say, well, you're not enough now, but if you just take this yoga cleanse, you're finally going to be worthy of being loved. Uh-huh. And we all don't even realize that we're buying into that belief. Like we go and we're like, oh yeah, yoga cleanse. I think my body's pretty toxic. I'm taking in all the time. I feel dirty all the time. So I'll just drink kale juice for 7 days and I'll finally feel better. Yeah. And then you drink kale juice for 7 days and you feel like crap and you've got low blood sugar and you kind of convince yourself that you're just in a spiritual high, but you're not. You have low blood sugar. Your body is not functioning optimally on kale juice. Just kale juice. I mean, kale juice plus other things, fine. So there's this, I think, sorry.
No, I could totally relate to that. I think we live in a society that, and I'm not saying this is wrong. Capitalistic society is constantly trying to convince you you're not enough. Mm-hmm. And I think that in order to have a healthy relationship with our body, and in order to function healthfully in a society that in order for business to keep going, for capitalism to keep going, has to convince you you're not enough so you'll buy their product. It's just how it is. I'm not saying it's right or wrong. But in order to do that, you have to know that you're worthy and that you're lovable in yourself, which is much easier said than done. I can give you tons of practices. I can surround you with positive people. I can give you I can help you find ways to do that within yourself, and that's what we're trying to do. The truth is, it's hard work. Like, I've recovered from an eating disorder. I haven't recovered from life. There's still moments when I feel unworthy and I don't feel quite lovable, and I kind of catch myself. I'm like, Chelsea, what are you doing? Like, how did you forget? How did you forget, Chelsea? And I catch myself, and I now catch myself faster. I won't pretend to be like a prophet on this at all, but I think essentially it comes down to surrounding yourself with incredible people and knowing what activities bring out the best in you, and then the best comes out in you and you just love it. Like, you look at who you're being in that moment, you're like, I really like who I'm being. I really like who I am when I'm being a friend of this person. I really like who I am when I'm on a sailboat staring at the sunset. I really like who I'm being. And of course I'm lovable because I really like this person. Yeah.
So that's what I try to do. That came out for me on the yoga mat for the first time. I was moving through postures and I was like, oh, wow, I'm really graceful. Oh my gosh, my legs are kind of awesome. Look how strong they are in this pose. Oh my God, my arms are holding me up in a handstand right now. I really like that. Like, that's totally lovable. So it started there. And now it's more of a full use in my day, and what people can I surround myself with. It constantly reminds me of that rather than all of the stuff coming in from.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's
No, I love that. And it's really true. I mean, I guess that's where I was coming from with, regardless of your history or what you've experienced, because life is life. And we're going to experience unworthiness. And we're going to go through times when, we think we're undeserving of something that human beings need to have. We need to have connection with other. We're tribal. We're not meant to be hermits in a cave for our entire lives. We're meant to be around other humans, and we're meant to love other humans, and we're meant to be loved by other humans. And that's just flat out part of being a human being.
Yes.
Yeah.
Maslow's hierarchy of need. That's a big one. Love and connection.
Yes. Yeah, it really is. I'm really curious how you curate that connection. Being a female business owner, being a human being. How do you how do you go about curating that for yourself?
Well, it's a daily challenge. I mean, I've become more and more extroverted as I've come out of my childhood and out of my dark times. So I'm pretty naturally, when I'm in those scenarios, extroverted, but I would say my habits are introverted. So, and you know what I mean when I say extroverted, introverted? Like, you feed off being around other people, you seek that out, and you seek out connection, versus you feed off being alone, which is actually a really positive trait too. But my habits are kind of like, I did go out to one meeting today, and I went out and got breakfast today, but I've pretty much been hibernating with my cat all day, trying to check stuff off my to-do list. Yeah. I also just came off of 3 weeks of travel, 3 weekends in a row of training people for our programs. I'm like on the road to the East Coast. So I'm sort of like extroverted out. But one of the things I do is to check myself is, one, I go to community movement classes. So I find being in my body in a space of community is really awesome. I live in LA, and I have not, in 3 years of being here, I have not found a yoga studio that I really feels like a community to me. It's you're practicing with 100 other people most of the time. It's mat to mat. It looks like the teacher is performing on a stage. It's like a failed act. Like, they're not all like that. I'm making generalizations, but other than maybe one in Santa Monica where my teacher only teaches once every couple months, I just haven't found that space. So I go to, actually, there's it's like a dance party on a bike, basically. It's called Soul Cycle. I'll go to that tonight. I'll go on Mondays and Wednesdays. And that to me is like, I am, on Monday we went and we celebrated the marriage of two gay men in our community. And we were sitting there the entire time dancing our butts off and being like, yeah, oh my God, we're so happy for you. And that's a community. And that filled my heart. And I walked out and I was like shiny. I was just like, that was so amazing. I love supporting my community. So I do things like that. I also, I build into my day one-on-one connections. So, on Monday when I had lunch with a really close friend who I could open up to emotionally and just be like, I am exhausted. And he was like, I love you. Come here, give me a hug. You're doing great work. You've got 2 weeks off. Don't worry. And I came out and I felt fueled and nourished. So I would say for those of us who maybe don't work in environments that don't nourish us in that connection community way, or work alone. I don't work alone all the time. Clearly I'm on the road and, connecting with my community every time I teach. But I think for those, you build into your day one-on-one connections or two-on-one connections with close people. And then I think movement-based community practices are awesome, whether it's dance or Tai Chi or Soul Cycle or a yoga class. It's awesome to be in your body and breathing with other people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Soul Cycle. Okay. I'm going to have to jot that one down.
Where do you live?
Yeah, that's a
Oh,
highly confidential secret.
well, I would say Soul Cycle isn't everywhere, but if you're in Southern California or the East Coast, you'll find one.
Okay, cool. But I love the idea of movement being in your body, because clearly that has helped you on your journey and in your life's work. But doing that in community, it's one thing to wake up at 6 a.m. and do a sun salutation just to sort of get your body loosened up, but that's a completely different experience than going to ecstatic dance or five rhythms or just going out with people that to have a hike or whatever it is. Being in community around movement, I think that's really interesting. And as you were talking, I was getting really excited about that because it made me think like, yes, I would get love and connection from that, but also I would get inspiration and creativity and what's my next step. And so I'm building myself and building myself up at the same time.
Yeah, and that's not to say there isn't value in solo solo movement practices.
Totally.
I think for me, I seek out conscious community movement practices. Like you're saying, inspiration. I seek out communities where I don't have an instructor yelling at me to kick the punching bag
right.
harder so that my abs get stronger. Like I don't seek that out. I seek out people who are like like, can you use this next 10 minutes to set an intention, embody that intention in your body, and carry it out into the world? Like, those are the type of movement practices I seek out.
Yeah.
Body and mind, just connecting them all the time, trying to get my body to tell my mind what to do because it seems to know really well.
Yes. Yeah, our bodies are really wise. There's a lot of wisdom going on.
It's crazy. It's a big part of what we teach in our program is how to trust your body that it will tell you what it needs. Like most people don't believe that your body, I know that for me, growing up, I was taught that your body was completely untrustworthy. That if you gave your body, run of the mill, it would tell you to eat, a dozen cinnamon rolls. And it took me a long time to learn to distinguish between when my body was telling me I needed something emotionally or when I needed something physically. Can I give you an anecdote?
Please.
So this is a really funny one. I was in the early stages of recovery from an eating disorder, and I had, you come out of treatment and they all say, well, let's try to move you from meal plan to intuitive eating, which is BS if you don't know what hunger feels like or fullness feels like. If you've been binge eating all your life and you literally don't have the fullness signals anymore, then how the heck are you going to eat intuitively? Like that used to make me so mad. But I was working on trying to develop hunger signals again. So doing belly breathing meditations, consciously sending sensory awareness down there to try to figure out, okay, well, is that hunger or is that, like angst or whatever? So I was also trying to listen to my cravings because I was starting to have cravings come up. And I had one week, I was living with a roommate for the first time and I started craving pickles. And I was like, pickles? Like, all right, that's kind of a safe food. I guess that's not that unhealthy. So I go out and I buy one jar of pickles within 2 days. And I'm talking a jar like this big. Like, I know you can't see, but like big jar of Texas dill pickles.
Oh, wow.
I'm through it in 2 days. Go out and buy another jar. And I'm through it in like 3 days. And my roommate, Michaela, came up to me one day and she's like, Chelsea, did you really eat both those jars of dill pickles? And I was like, yeah, I did. And she was like, that was like less than a week. She's like, are you okay? Like, why are you craving pickles? And I was like, I don't know. So I go onto Google and I'm like, okay, why do women crave pickles? What do you think came up, Elizabeth?
Pregnancies.
Oh, and I was like, no way. Like, not unless it's a virgin birth. Like this is But I click on the link and I'm like, okay, well, why do pregnant women crave pickles? It says that pregnant women crave pickles because pickles are high in sodium. Sodium increases blood volume. And when you're building a baby in your stomach, you're sharing all of your blood with that baby and your blood pressure drops. So by increasing blood volume, it increases your blood pressure, which keeps you from passing out.
That makes
sense. Now,
sense.
that's fascinating. I'd always had low blood pressure, but the really amazing thing is that week I was having my first menstrual cycle in 7 years.
Oh, wow.
I know. I was like, holy crap, that is a sneaky, stealthy, amazing body. How did you know that? Like, how did it figure out to make me crave pickles in order to get that meat? I would never have thought of that. And it was that moment where I was like, my body, it like has wisdom way beyond whatever reaches consciousness for me. Yeah. And I got to trust it. Like, that's incredible. So anyway, there's my anecdote.
No, I love that. I love that anecdote. And I love that it's, there's some science. There's, people who don't really go for the woo-woo hippie stuff of, our bodies are wise.
Right.
There's science behind it. I'm depleting myself naturally, biologically, of blood volume. I must eat things to increase blood volume. My body knows exactly what to put in the belly so that I sustain myself.
And it's amazing.
Scientific. I love that anecdote. That's
well, and sometimes, speaking of science, sometimes when we're craving cinnamon rolls or ice cream or chocolate, it's because the body doesn't, I think the brain has a hard time when the body shows up with a need. It just sort of gives you a craving. It doesn't really tell you whether it's emotional or physical unless you're really looking into it. Right. So, when you're craving ice cream, at least for me, when my mom, when I was 20, was diagnosed with, and it was terrible. Like, the mother I knew was gone. She no longer recognized who I was. She was in a wheelchair. It was just 20 years old, like losing a parent, And I was walking through an airport, and I was walking by a Cinnabon stand, Cinnabuns. I don't know if you know what those are, but I smelled them, and I'm like, oh, must have Cinnabon right now. Recovering anorexic. Like, this is not something that's okay. And I was like, why the fuck would my body be telling? Excuse me, sorry, I'm trying to. Why would my body be be telling me I need Cinnabons right now? Does it really need sugar and salt and butter and dough? Is that really what my body needs right now? And I was thinking about it later, like, why would I have been craving that? And my mom never cooked us breakfast growing up, except every once in a while she'd pull out a Pillsbury roll of cinnamon rolls and pop them in the oven. And that smell reminded me of my mom. Yeah. What my body was actually telling me I was craving was nurturance and a mother's relief, emotional relief and affection. And it showed up in the craving for cinnamon roll. Speaking of the science part of it, sugars and fats like that release dopamine. They release these happy chemicals that bring you out of depression. And I was grieving. So I do trust my body. I mean, I try to slow down and be mindful enough to go, is this an emotional need or a physical need? Right. My body was telling me what it needed. It wasn't trying to trick me.
Yeah.
So anyway.
Oh, I love those stories. I love it. And I'm really grateful that you're bearing yourself, that you're really bearing these stories to the world, because they are powerful. I mean, it's all these light bulbs are going off in my head, and we're just talking on the internet right now.
Hear this. I don't know why. Just like, well, here's what happened.
No, it's true, and I think that's the other thing, and this is another thing I wanted to ask as like a closing question is, what Women Enough as an organization really gives to people is that community of women, women sitting in a circle, oldest, most ancient thing that we've ever done as women, and being with each other and either witnessing where we are currently or where we've been, or what we've been through. And I want to ask you, why now? Why was Women Enough as an organization? Why would Eat, Breathe, Thrive as an organization? Why are these messages important for us to hear now as women?
Can I speak directly to the community portion and sort of that? Yeah.
Totally.
I think that in modern society, we've lost a lot of those rituals and rites of passage, if you will, and support systems that were sort of built into more agricultural, less technological, less sort of, suburbia. Each person has a square. It was a lot more interdependent. That had bad things. There's a lot of positives to the development of modern world. I'm not making it all bad. Not like nostalgic for the past. I'd much rather live. But one of the consequences of us moving into this modern age has been more separation, less interdependence. We don't, and what you were saying, community is an essential part of our program. It's also an essential part of AA and NA and all of these communities. I think people are missing rites of passage. I recently went to Burning Man for the first time, which I don't know if you know what that is, but essentially people build a city in the desert and they go out, and the whole intention is be yourself. If you want to ride around naked on your bike all day, we're going to be like, yeah, go you. Awesome. We love you. Yeah. And that's really the feeling. Like people say that, but it's really that way. You want to wear like a Dr. Seuss hat and bark all day. People are going to be like, yeah, that's the barking Dr. Seuss. Awesome. But the big thing wasn't just that acceptance of everyone there and that sense of community. At the end of it, they burn pretty much all of the structures that they've built. So they literally turn the city to ashes. So there's a big temple, and everyone goes throughout the week, and they leave these pieces, these items that are memorable to them in the temple. It's a wooden temple. So for instance, I left the letter from my mother, and people write all over the temple, and there's incense burning all week long, and they're in there and they're singing together, and they're leaving these things behind they need to let go of. Yeah. And then at the end of the whole Burning Man experience, you all sit around, 25-ish thousand people. They sit around, it's utterly silent. No one tells you to be quiet. It's just utterly silent. And you watch this entire temple burn and fall to the ground, and the ashes of everything we're all letting go of float away. I get chill. I literally have goosebumps up and down my legs thinking about it. Wow. That was a rite of passage, a community rite of passage that's, I think, is lacking. So organizations like Women Enough, organizations like ours, organizations like Burning Man, I think are trying to fill that void of, we need rites of passage. We need rituals to move through this difficult thing called life. It's difficult and beautiful, but we need that. We need community to hold us in it and to experience it together and to know that we're not alone in it. So it's another long answer to your question.
Oh, I love that. Your long answer, Chelsea. It's awesome. I love it. No, thank you so much. And I want to honor and appreciate how vulnerable you've been about your own story and telling us tidbits of your life. And also, I really just want to appreciate what you're doing in the world. You're using part of your previous pain and suffering so that you've transmuted that into something that's really powerful and impactful for others, and continues to be for yourself, it seems like. So
yes, it is. It keeps me happy. Thank you so much, Elizabeth.
We want to keep Chelsea happy, doing happy dances.
Thank you. I really appreciate it. Thanks for having me on.
Of course. Thank you very much.
Okay. Bye.
Bye.